What's up, everyone? It is Travelers Week, Travelers Championship up in Connecticut, or I guess possibly down in Connecticut if you're above Connecticut, or maybe in Connecticut if you're in Connecticut. Either way, I'm in Pennsylvania, so it's up in Connecticut for me. But what matters more is that we've got a pretty good field, especially at the high end, with Bryson DeChambeau, who made a pretty good surge at the U.S. Open, just couldn't get it done back to back, and then really fell off at that 44 on the back nine. Dustin Johnson was kind of lingering a little bit at the U.S. Open. Brooks Koepka, same for him. But these three guys, from a FanDuel standpoint, they're the highest salary golfers in the field. But Koepka actually fell down to fifth behind Patrick Cantlay and Paul Casey. But I mean, that's a pretty good top five. And then we also have Patrick Reed, Scotty Scheffler, who's in really good form. Brian Harman seems to be getting a lot of love. Abraham Ancer, I think, getting a lot of love. I know I love him this week, but I mean, we got ourselves a pretty good field. And despite that, Tony Finau's 30-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, does Tony Finau fit what we need at TPC River Highlands? Let's find out. This is the FanDuel PGA Q&A, of course. So that means it helps me if I get some questions from you all on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, whatever you prefer for this week. But, I'm going to be talking everything for this week: the field, the betting odds on FanDuel Sportsbook, the daily fantasy slate on FanDuel. I have win simulations that'll go over my spreadsheet. So this is a good time for you to ask your questions, specifically head-to-heads work well. I have a little finder that I can compare guys head-to-head. So let's dive in to the course for this week's Travelers Championship at TPC River Highlands. I like to start, as always, on Data Golf and look at this tool here, what drives variation in score, simply because I like to see how golfers separate and what stats matter, not necessarily from like a course fit standpoint, but just what's actually affecting the way that golfers separate their scores in a given week. Tee to green, always, every single week, we see strokes gained approach be number one. We have that on average at TPC River Highlands for the Travelers, but last year it fell down to 29.5%, which I think is about as low as I've ever seen it. And that's kind of, on par with what we've seen historically. And we've seen strokes gained off the tee matter a ton, explaining how golfers separate. Now, on average, we're still looking at about 18% for the event average, 18.2% for strokes gained off the tee, which is substantially higher than we get on the tour average. So strokes gained off the tee is kind of how it explains how golfers separate a little bit more than iron play. In putting, short game, about the same, relative to what we see historically, sort of week to week on the tour average. But another thing I like to do while I'm on this page is just look back, refresh my memory for what kind of scores it takes to win at a particular course. And we see Dustin Johnson 19 under with a bunch of, double-digit under par performances. 2019, Chez Reavie 17 under, won by four shots over Keegan Bradley, who was 13 under. Bubba Watson 17 under. Jordan Spieth 12 under in that playoff with Daniel Berger. I think Spieth holed out from a bunker, if I'm not mistaken, on that one. But 14 under. But we're kind of looking at, not U.S. Open level difficulty for this week at TPC River Highlands. Going to play a little bit easier. And so the lower the score goes, typically for me, that means more golfers are actually in the mix. And it might be a little counterintuitive, but kind of the way that I like to think about it is, I say this a lot, so forgive me if you've heard it before, but if you have a par 4 that is hard to get a birdie on, and only the longest, best golfers can kind of birdie that, that is an advantage to be super long, to be really good, be able to birdie that tough par 4. If a par 4 is playing easy and many golfers can birdie that, those longest hitters they will lose some of that advantage because they're not going to be able just to eagle par fours because they're longer and statistically better than the field. So that's kind of one thing I like to look at whenever we have scores that typically do go lower. And kind of, it's not the same thing, but another reason to kind of expect a little bit more variance this week is this number here. The importance of driving accuracy. Driving accuracy, statistically more important than it is on the tour average course, according to Data Golf's course fit tool. And distance still matters, a little bit less so than your average tour stop. But whenever you have driving distance not be a prerequisite and having driving accuracy matter a bit more, that means that the shorter hitters who hit fairways are still going to be able to contend. So we have that variable of scores being a little bit lower, and so it's going to be harder naturally for the best golfers to separate. Whereas you look at the U.S. Open leaderboard for the most part last week, there were some names we didn't really expect there, but in this in the same breath, we saw a lot of the best golfers separate over 4 rounds from the field for the most part. So I think there's going to be a lot of variance this week. And another thing that speaks to that is just looking at who Data Golf gives the best boost to their expected baseline based on the course setup. Chez Reavie, number 1, he's expected to be 0.34 strokes above his baseline at this course because of how it sets up, because it rewards his accuracy, because it doesn't really penalize him for not being necessarily long for this week. Brendan Todd, Ryan Moore. So these shorter hitters kind of get the bump up. Abraham Answer, someone I like a lot this week. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, who's getting sort of penalized the most or who's losing their advantage the most? Wyndham Clark, who's super long off the tee. Bryson DeChambeau, that's a big name, the favorite right now. He's not going to be able to gain as many strokes off the tee necessarily because of his distance as he normally does, based on what all the data is telling us. So you kind of have to bump Bryson down a little bit. Now, even if you bump Bryson down, he's still one of the best golfers in the field. So I'm not saying completely avoid him. What I'm saying is his gap, his talent level gap, the distance gap could be a bit mitigated this week. And so I think we're looking at a higher variance week than we would at something that plays closer to 5 or 10 under par even, if we're looking at scores that go closer to 20 under for the week. So that's something that I'm looking for. And just another thing that kind of leads me to believe there's going to be some high-ish variance is the average green size here being small at 5,000 square feet. Roughly the average on tour is 6,000 square feet. So we're going to get, we got smaller greens, shorter hitters are in play, longer hitters don't get as much of an advantage. Scores are going to go a little bit lower. So I think from that whole perspective, and it actually bears out in my win simulations, we don't have necessarily the studs, the big hitters being as favored as they would be at a different setup. Again, if you guys have any questions, hit up the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch chat. I do have a question from Aaron on Facebook. Harmon, Guido, Fratelli, do I like any of them this week? I can pull them up. Actually, Guido was a late entry, so he's not on my spreadsheet. So I'll use Data Golf's adjusted numbers here. And Fratelli's pretty long, but we have these 3 here over the past 6 months. I think that's a pretty solid sample to look at. Enough shot length rounds, 29 for Fratelli, 42 for Guido, and 40 for Brian Harmon. Harmon's getting a lot of buzz this week, but he is statistically the best of those 3 from what is Data Golf's true strokes gain metric. So that's their field adjusted strokes gain metric. And Harmon easily number 1 out of those 3. I'm okay with Brian Harmon. I'm not necessarily prioritizing him, but I see the case for it, especially at a course where it doesn't necessarily have to be super long. This is the one worrisome spot for all of these golfers, though, is that iron play, their approach numbers being a little bit close to field average overall. So none of these golfers are golfers I specifically like, but they're all positive tee to green, even slightly. Pretty much aside from Fratelli's putting, close to or above baseline. So these, I kind of say this a lot when I talk to Jim Sonis on the Heat Check. There are certain golfers who I'm not necessarily in on, but I'm not going to talk you out of. None of these three golfers are golfers I would talk anybody out of for this week based on their recent stats. Another question from B Chaps. Outside of the DJ Brooks Bryson top odds, who do I feel has a great chance at a top 10 finish? For me, it's going to be Patrick Cantlay. I'll switch over to my spreadsheet now. Cantlay's actually rating out for me as the second most likely golfer to win this week behind Dustin Johnson. I have him at 4.6%, which again is pretty low, but I talked about the variance for this week. But Cantlay, very, very good. I have him in my field-adjusted strokes gained data, which is adjusted for field strength, but also recency. So DJ's starting to get more and more dinged with, the not necessarily as good data, but he's still very good over the past year. And so he's still the number one golfer in my database, all things considered. But Cantlay and Bryson rating out about the same, but Cantlay is not going to get as negatively affected by the course setup. We've seen Cantlay fare really well. So Cantlay's might actually be at salary my favorite FanDuel play for the week. I love him for an outright. So he's the one out of those top three. If you want something a little bit deeper, it's probably going to be Abraham Answer. If I'm talking like a safer top 10, Abraham Answer, because not long off the tee, but does everything else well. At 28-1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. Pretty solid win odds at 3.7%. And you see no red flags in here, so doesn't rank in the 25th percentile or worse in any of the key stats that I'm sort of looking at. The one problem for Answer at most situations is just distance, but that's not we've seen Answer 8th and 11th here the past 2 years. So Answer, actually one of my favorite picks to win, and someone who I have every intention on betting by the time we get to Thursday to win outright. So hopefully you're talking about some of those guys toward the top, but not necessarily the top three. So I'd say Cantlay and Answer, kind of the guys who I'm looking at. And also, I'm not going to fade Bryson, Brooks, and DJ like on purpose, but I'm probably going to build around Cantlay, Abraham Answer, possibly Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Reed. I'm looking for ways to differentiate whenever there's going to be some volatility. So while I easily see the case for those top three, I don't feel like they're must this week, especially with that second tier being what it is. Another question from YouTube from Jason, Ian Poulter. Haven't looked too much at Ian Poulter. Let's pull him up. 85-1 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook, 9,200 on FanDuel. That's pretty good salary for him. We see positive numbers in my field-adjusted strokes gained data over the past year. The tee to green, pretty good overall, but a lot of that is from around the green, which is not really what you want to see. It's not a key stat for me this week. Poulter is, not necessarily the best birdie maker, but rates out well enough in the 73rd percentile relative to this field. And this is just one of those situations where he's not going to be as negatively impacted from the distance as he would be at most courses. I'll actually pull up that course fit tool because I don't actually know where Poulter is on here, but probably close to the top. So a plus 0.08. He's going to gain from accuracy. Being accurate at this course is going to benefit him. Kind of gains from not necessarily needing the distance. The short game kind of rates out a little bit, kind of zeroes him out a little bit, but Poulter at 9,200, not someone I was prioritizing because there are some other names in that 9,000 range I like. But honestly, I don't see enough aside from that. The one thing that always kind of keeps me out of looking at Ian Poulter more is just the approach number not being particularly good for one of the most important stats week to week. So that's kind of where I am with Poulter most weeks. I'll actually pull him up a little bit closer too and see what we got here from Okay, so we see negative approach for him in 2021. What's he been doing lately with the approach? Mostly red, which is not what you want to see according to Data Golf's true strokes gain numbers. That's a free tool, by the way. Their query tool, super helpful overall. So I think Ian Poulter, again, one of those guys I would not talk anyone out of, but I'm not necessarily there myself. But I see the case for Poulter with that really good short game, and with the fact that he doesn't need to be long off the tee. Another question from B Chaps: Scheffler and Reed are high on my list, so appreciate background on answer. Yeah, I mean, I can pull up Scheffler. I talked about him a little bit more in detail on the heat check this morning with Jim Sonis when we break down the field. Looks most specifically from a DFS perspective. Let me see if I can get my camera back on. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. But Scotty Scheffler in really good form overall. And I think one of the kind of sneakier plays, if he does get, actually just pull up his ranks here as well. Fourth in Data Golf's true strokes gained over the past 6 months, 9th tee to green. The putting, the short game is getting better for Scheffler, and we've seen just good finishes from him in tough fields. 7th at the U.S. Open, 3rd at Memorial. Did miss the cut at the Charles Schwab, but putted pretty poorly, so you can kind of forgive him from that angle. And then 8th at the PGA. We know what Scheffler does whenever he's on, and it's have some of the best tee to green numbers on the PGA Tour. So, it feels a little strange to be down on Bryson, DJ, Brooks a little bit, but you can build a really good lineup without those guys. And I think that's going to be a very easy way to differentiate. So I'm kind of all over the place. I do have Patrick Cantlay as my number 1. Bryson's still probably my number 2. I have fewer concerns with Bryson than I do with Dustin Johnson, but it's not a super deep field, but that second tier, wherever you want to kind of put that, maybe after Brooks, according to the odds, Reed, Scheffler, Harmon, Answer, Finau, those you can build, and I like Kevin Streelman too. So you can build really good lineups by cutting off that top end, and you'll have a lot of options overall. Another question from YouTube from Jason Garrick Higo. So I was in on I thought it was Higo, but I think it's Higo. I try to get pronunciations right, but haven't seen enough consensus there. Higo, though, this is something that I've talked about in recent weeks with him, and I kind of fell into that trap, but he's a really good putter, and if you watch him putt, he looks so good, and it looks like he's going to make everything, and that inspires a lot of confidence. But he's also long off the tee. He drove it over 310 yards on average on the European Tour, but didn't get it done at the U.S. Open. Let's look and see here. Gained strokes off the tee, lost strokes putting. Of course, great putter, goes and putts really, really poorly. So, this again adjusts for field strength. And we've seen, so gained about a stroke per round once adjusted off the tee, was about neutral with the approach, and just really poor short game. So that's pretty forgivable, honestly, for a golfer who, with these wins. I know the European Tour is more equivalent to the Korn Ferry Tour than I think a lot of people realize, and myself too, until I started looking at the data. But, those 2 recent wins and then one, a weak field at Congaree, but there's a lot to like with Higo, and you can forgive a missed cut at the U.S. Open with just poor short game. You don't want to see the inverse. You want to see the good ball striking. You want to see good ball striking and poor short game in a missed cut, as opposed to terrible ball striking, but some solid short game. So I can see myself going back there. I haven't necessarily prioritized him, but it's 70-1. It could be kind of like that honeymoon phase a little bit over. So I'd probably be a little bit more inclined to bet him for an outright or a top 10 than I would for for a whole FanDuel lineup, because if start down, if what we see the long sample is that he's actually really reliant on his putter, kind of like a Jordan Spieth when the ball striking wasn't there, or I was going to say Ricky Fowler, but his putting's not really there either right now. But Fowler's is kind of interesting again. But I think I kind of get like a yellow to green light on Higo as opposed to a red light, even after that missed cut. Another question from B Chaps: how about Charlie Hoffman? Really like Charlie Hoffman. I'll pull him up on my spreadsheet. The reason for like Guido and Higo that I use the data golf stuff is they have larger samples, just not on the PGA Tour. Charlie Hoffman, so much green, which is what you want to see in these key stats. And again, these do adjust for field strength, so it's not like he's kind of cheating his way to some good stats. Good salary of 10,300, pretty solid win odds at 4,400 for Hoffman. Some of the best ball striking that we'll get in this field, 98th percentile in adjusted approach, 85th percentile adjusted off the tee. The around the green play is not great. The fairways gained, not great. But those are stats that they're not going to come into a play necessarily, especially around the green. If you are relying on your around the green play in something that resembles a birdie fest, you're probably not that much of a factor anyway. So you can kind of forgive that. You would be playing Charlie Hoffman for the elite birdie rate, the great ball striking, the distance, at least the neutral bent grass putting. Greens this week are bent grassy and POA, but I'm just looking mostly at bent grass splits this week. But Charlie Hoffman, like him, and also just another reason, honestly, to feel pretty solid not chasing Bryson coming off of like that bad back nine at a course that his distance might not help him with so much. DJ, we don't really know what's going on with him. Anytime Brooks is in a non-major, I don't have that much interest. So kind of another reason to say I don't need the studs and I don't need the low-end values. You can build a great lineup, have all 6 of your golfers have a realistic shot to hit that win. You need a win if you want to have a big score on FanDuel. And as soon as you start digging into the low 7,000s or even upper 7,000s, just so that you can get to Bryson, you better hope Bryson wins, and you better hope that those value guys make the cut. If you go to a little bit more balanced in a field like this that has a really strong second, third, fourth tier, then you have the fall off. Then you get 6 out of 6 shots with your lineup to hit the winner. Kevin Streelman or Keegan Bradley? Question from DJ on Facebook. I like Streelman a lot. I'll pull them up on the Finder, show them side by side here. Yeah, so virtually the same salary on FanDuel, very different win odds on FanDuel Sportsbook, which generally is enough to tell you that there's some bit of a discrepancy there. But my win simulation sees Streelman as a full percentage point higher, which is pretty significant to win. Much more likely to top 10 as well, which kind of goes hand in hand there. But the better golfer over the past year in adjusted strokes gained, average across all tours. Keegan leads tee to green, but we know that Keegan is never going to lead many people in putting, which is the case. So you make Kevin Streelman look like a good putter. You're probably not a great putter. So for me, it's going to be Streelman just from the safety standpoint, but I think Streelman's upside is probably just as high as Keegan's. So it's going to be Streelman for me. Question from Jason. Jim, I'm sure Jim will be talking about my A's in just a second. But yeah, Streelman is one of my favorite plays for this week. So I'm going to jump over very, very quickly. Simulations just show the most likely winners according to my sims. It's going to be DJ number 1. I'm probably not going to bet DJ though, even at those odds. He's not that bad of a value. I like Patrick Cantlay, but not necessarily 15-1. He was 17-1 earlier this week. I'm probably more inclined to start my betting card this week with Abraham Answer. I'll take a look at Tony Finau, I guess, at those odds. Harris English flushing it again. Cam Smith, Russell Henley makes some sense here. Brendan Todd is a long shot. Cam Tringali is a long shot. I mean, when you have Bryson, completely overvalued according to my model, from a sportsbook standpoint, you're going to see a lot of value arise. For me, I'm looking at Cantlay, probably Patrick Reed at this point, and Abraham Answer at the top for me from a betting standpoint for this week. All right, I'm going to bring on Jim Sonis. We already got some questions about Oakland. I usually have takes on the A's, but not today.
Why not?
I don't know who they're playing, but what I do know is that I'm going to play my A's.
We have like a company contest tonight. You've not done any research yet at all? Like, so I've got softer competition is what you're saying.
I've been looking at some golf stuff, trying to prep. Got a lot of questions today, so I'm glad I did some extra prep. But
why would you prepare for your work? Like why would you prepare for work as opposed to studying for something that's not essential to your job at all?
Because I want to have some good answers, and I that's important to me.
You want to have a good answer, but that was a terrible answer. So get out of here. You're no longer welcome on this chat. Thank you for your service. Get out of here. Just no, you're no longer allowed. Bye, Brandon. Good luck this week. Have fun.
You too.
All right, so that was Brandon Gdula with the PGA Q&A for today. I am Jim Sonis here to talk about a pretty fun baseball slate. We do have a lot of good pitchers available for tonight over on FanDuel because look at these names on this sheet. Zach Wheeler, Max Scherzer, limited capacity for today for Max Scherzer. Garrett Cole is pitching. We've got, I think Tarek Skubal pretty good. We got Charlie Morton, Marcus Stroman, Sandy Alcantara is awesome from a pitching perspective. Zach Gallen, Clayton Kershaw, Blake Snell, a lot of good names. I think I skipped Lucas Giolito. What an idiot. Anyway, a lot of good names for today on the pitching side. But our first question was via Jason over on YouTube asking about Oakland. And Oakland is facing what I would assume will effectively be kind of a bullpen game for the Rangers for today. Taylor Hearn is starting. He is not fully stretched out. He has gone, I think, 34 pitches over his past 2 outings. So I would assume he'll be somewhere around 50 to 60 pitches for today, after which they'll give way to the bullpen. We talked about bullpens yesterday, and the Rangers are a bullpen we can exploit. So although it's not like a regular situation, I do think that we can stack the A's for today. The A's, my 3rd ranked stack for today, Jason, so we're in on them for sure. No lineup yet, I don't believe, for the A's, but we'll talk about them if it does come in before the end of the show for today. Let's talk to Kyle over on YouTube. I need a one-off at second base, $2,600 or lower. Who you got? Okay, so let's go over here to second base. So we need $2,600 or lower for here. I've got an offer apparently. I don't want to click that off anyway. $2,600 or lower at second base. Okay. No. Who are the Yankees facing? Brady Singer gets a lot of ground balls. Don't really want to go at Torres in that spot. Harrison's facing Wheeler. Rojas facing Freddie Peralta. Peralta can let up some impactful contact, but I'd really rather not go there because Peralta, very good pitcher. Freddie Galvis is facing, I believe it's Greinke. Okay, I could potentially consider that. Galvis has had a good year overall so far. Greinke is one of the guys whose spin rate has declined a pretty decent amount over the past couple of starts, so that's at least in my mind as being something that's worth noting for today. Charlie Morton's pretty good for Atlanta, so not looking at any Mets guys for today. Andrew Heaney, meh. I guess we could potentially consider Jed Lowry. Lowry's not generally someone I regard as having a lot of upside, but let's check out his splits here versus lefties, see if that does change at all when he's batting as a righty as opposed to batting as a lefty. Lowry, 097 ISO. He will get to bat as a righty, but he's also not like a super high upside guy from that side of the plate. So that's not super enticing. So far, it's probably Galvis, I guess, at the top of the order for me. As far as the second baseman, Tony Kemp's a lefty. I guess, it depends on who winds up being the The second guy out of there after Hearn. Leury Garcia, not a big power guy either, so I want to stack the White Sox, but don't really want to go there. Let's check out Eli White against a lefty for the Rangers. I think the Rangers are kind of interesting for one-offs. Andy Ibanez, potentially, if you want to get there. We've got Adolis Garcia as well, but let's check out Eli White against the lefty. Just 41 plate appearances, 0.28 ISO. That ain't great. So it's not ideal, I would say, among the lower salaried second baseman. If you're going down here, you're probably not going to get a guy who has a whole lot of power. Unless you, maybe let's check out Andy Ibanez. Why not? Let's just dig into this here, because maybe he can be our little savior here as we scramble to try to find some value. Ibanez, 3-run dinger in last night's game, or was it last night? Yeah, last night. 295 ISO at AAA. Yeah, okay. So I would say Andy Ibanez is going to be your guy to go to if you're looking for a value second baseman. Kyle, give me Ibanez for that one. I actually think like he's a decent one-off. So let's go Andy Ibanez. Let's talk to Alvin. Best bats to target in the White Sox lineup. I am annoyed, Alvin, because there's no Yasmani Grandal for today. They're batting Zach Collins, who is a lefty, against the lefty. They could have had Collins play some other day. Instead, he's playing today. I'm annoyed. So that's one less guy for us to target here for the White Sox. And honestly, I feel like it's really only Anderson, Moncada, Abreu, and Vaughn who you can really feel good about. Now, I will note that Brian Goodwin, I was looking at his splits earlier. If you look at him from 2019 through 2021 versus lefties, I believe it's around 120 something or so plate appearances. His ISO in that time is actually over 200. So Goodwin can occasionally have some pop. Let's show this here on the splits tool on Fangraphs. We'll click versus lefties. And we're going to go with 2019 through 2021 to get an appropriately sized sample. We'll group this by career. See it all at once. So 155 plate appearances. His ISO is 204. As you can see here, it's not the best overall numbers, and he does strike out a lot, but I don't think it's a terrible profile. So ideally, to me, we're going to be not getting to Goodwin for today because, it's tough. But it's not an ideal world. We're living in a world where I do want to get to Zach Wheeler, and he is $11,400. That's not super easy to get to. So I do need to save some salary at some point. So I'm going to put Abreu in there. I definitely want him. I definitely want Anderson, and I definitely want Vaughn. I would say those are the top three guys here by a significant margin. And then it drops off after that. So we'll put Vaughn in the outfield here. That gives us $2,980 left. I think that your options are Moncada, who is $2,800 at third base, or you could go Goodwin. I think that Moncada works really well if you want to go with the Cubs. Like you want to get Chris Bryant, you want to get some of the higher salary guys in there. I think that Goodwin could work. So I'm not actively seeking out Goodwin, but I'm also not going to cross him off for today. I think that that's where I'm at right now is if you need the salary savings, you can definitely justify Goodwin. Moncada is not great against lefties anyway. So I think that honestly, if I could play things any way I wanted, Alvin, I might just say go with these three guys, Anderson, Abreu, and Vaughn, and roll that way. But we'll see. We'll see how things shake out. If I can find some salary in the Cubs or find some salary on another stack, then I'll feel okay just going with these three guys. But if I need value, I think that Moncada and Goodwin are at least viable options for today on the White Sox. Diffuse, hearing reports of Jordan Lyles being the bulk reliever for tonight. That has to give the A's a boost. Not really, because I think that I was kind of viewing it as being a good spot anyway. Lyles gets some ground balls, at least he has recently. I think his fly ball rate against is about 31%. I initially thought it would be Lyles for today, so I was preparing as if he would go. I read the reasoning for Lyles not starting for today was to give him additional rest, and that doesn't necessarily track with having him be the bulk reliever. So I would say the A's are fine no matter what. I think that they are a decent option. I wouldn't care too much about Lyles. The other middle relievers there are not great either. So to me, even if it's somehow confirmed before the game it is Lyles, I would keep the A's neutral. They're a good stack no matter what, basically. Alvin, are you also on the Rays or the Mariners? Mariners for one-offs, yes. They're facing Kyle Freeland. Freeland's really struggling since he came back. And he's also been a guy who's seen some decreased movement. Sample I have on Freeland is his past 3 starts with that decreased movement, a lot of hard contact, no strikeouts. So the Mariners righties work. They don't have a ton of righties who are like good. So that's why I'm going to limit it to just one-offs. But I do think the one-offs there are pretty enticing. The Rays are facing Eduardo Rodriguez. No, I will not be getting there personally because Rodriguez is a good pitcher. He's like really inefficient with his pitches, so I can't get there for DFS. I thought about it. He's $6,500, and I actually gave it some thought because I was like, he's getting strikeouts. He's suppressing hard contact. The Rays love to strike out versus lefties, but he's super inefficient. Like, if you look at his game logs, you'll see that he actually has a decent pitch count, but he never goes deep in the game because from a pitches per plate appearance perspective, I don't have that number in front of me, but he just seems really inefficient. 5, 4, 4 and 2/3, 5 and 2/3, or 5 and 1/3, 4 and 2/3, 4, really rough. And that's despite the fact that he's gone over 100 pitches twice in the past 5 games. So I can't get to Rodriguez as a pitcher, but I also don't want to use batters against him because he is pretty good. Despite the fact that he's inefficient, I think he's a good pitcher. His ERA, 6.21. So that's rough, but the peripherals for Rodriguez pretty good. So no Rays for me for today. Let's see here. Mateo, what do you know about Garcia on Houston? He is batting second. Okay, so let's pull up the Houston order here. Robel Garcia batting second against Jorge Lopez, which means that our guy Chas McCormick bumped down to 7th, disappointing, and also means no Carlos Correa. So overall, it's going to be a downgrade for this stack, for the Astros stack. Let's check out Garcia here in the player pool, and he is $2,000. So the bare minimum. Let's go through the process here of deciding how to view him for today. Robel Garcia. He's a switch hitter, 28 years old. So limited samples so far this year. A lot of strikeouts, both in AAA and the majors. And he hit the ball pretty hard, but in a very, very small sample in AAA. Back in 2019 in AAA, a lot of power, so 304 ISO. So probably going to be a guy who has some pop. As you can see here, the projection systems, I tend to lean mostly on Zips, but the bat also very good. Zips has him projected for a 195 ISO this year, but a lot of strikeouts. So we can go over here and check out Jorge Lopez. 23% strikeout rate this year. Let's check out what his numbers are specifically versus lefties. I believe he might be kind of a funky guy from a splits perspective because of the pitch mix he uses. So I do want to check this out here before saying to bump up Garcia because he'll bat switch hitter here. Lopez versus lefties, 23% strikeout rates, a little bit higher there. Does allow more hard contact and more fly balls, but also gets more ground balls. So I would say Robel Garcia is an option. Another guy you could consider as being a lower salary play for today, but I don't know. I think it's not a situation where I need to get there. I think that he's probably going to be pretty popular for today, if I had to guess. But a lot of strikeouts, this means he's pretty volatile. Every hitter is volatile, so keep that in mind. But I think that he's an option. If you're stacking the Astros, I think I would get there. Now, I would say if you're stacking the Astros, it might be enticing to potentially pivot to either Toro or McCormick as being your lower salary play. They're batting lower in the order. They, I don't believe, have strikeout rates as high as Garcia does. And potentially they could be the guys who go off here for today. So let's check out the numbers for Toro here versus righties. Only 21 plate appearances. We'll check out a larger sample on him. Chas McCormick versus righties, 262 ISO. He's great. So he does strike out a bit, but he hits the ball for power, even against righties. Abraham Toro, we're going to pull up the numbers for him over a larger sample versus righties. Okay, so we're up to 155 plate appearances across his career, 19% strikeout rate, 167 ISO, 30% fly ball rate, a couple too many ground balls. So I would say, if you're looking at this Astro stack and trying to identify some value plays you can go to, I actually don't mind pivoting to McCormick lower in the order. I know he's lower in the order, and we do want to get maximize plate appearances and stuff, but I like McCormick's profile best, and he'll probably be the less popular one because he's batting lower in the order. So I would say if I'm picking, I pick McCormick over Garcia for today. just from a perspective of, I think Garcia will likely be pretty popular, and McCormick might slide under the radar because he's batting lower in the order. Jason, who is a rookie that's coming up, I believe his name is Wander Franco. Okay, so let's see. He might not actually be in the player pool because sometimes that does happen when a guy makes his debut. Okay, he's in there batting second against Eduardo Rodriguez. Okay, Wander Franco, I don't need to look him up. He's great. So let's look at Eduardo Rodriguez, look at his numbers versus righties specifically this year. Let's actually check out Wander Franco just to show you his numbers in AAA so far. He's a switch hitter, so he'll be batting righty for today. Should clarify that. But in AAA, 7 dingers, 5 stolen bases, 272 ISO. So obviously we like that. Eduardo Rodriguez, let's check out him versus righties and see what he's been doing there. Okay, so versus righties, strikeout rate is 27%. The WOBA is 360, so that's pretty high. 498 slugging percentage, but not a lot of hard contact, not a ton of fly balls. So I think that Franco is in play. $2,500 at shortstop. You're going to take that, especially for a guy as good as him. I would say he's an option for sure, Jason. Just because I'm not a little bit lower on the Rays, and I think that Rodriguez probably due for some positive regression, I would say, or some progression, I guess we could say, more accurately there. I would be okay not prioritizing him, but if you have 2,500 at shortstop, you're probably not going to get a better option than Wander Franco for today. Aaron, Chicago seems pretty cool from a home run perspective. Are you talking about like from a weather perspective or is in like a form perspective? Because from a weather perspective, there aren't any warm games in this slate. I thought this morning that they would close the roof in Texas, and they are doing that. So there aren't any warm weather games for today for hitting dingers. So if you're looking for like a great hitting spot for today, you're not going to find it on this slate. Mike, which Cubs do you like aside from Wisdom if he plays? Yeah, we'll see if he plays. I'm not sure. I just want to mention this morning that I thought that he was good if he does work his way in there. Let's refresh and see if the lineup is out. It is not. Okay, so let's go over here and check out the Cubs numbers versus righties. I know Wilson Contreras is a lower salary for today, but I believe last time I checked that his numbers versus righties have been pretty disappointing so far. So might not be super intrigued by the value there. 131 ISO, that could be worse. 29% fly ball rate, that's not terrible. So honestly, like Contreras definitely is an option. Rizzo, 218 ISO versus righties. Jock Peterson, 263. So I would say we should feel okay bumping up the lefties in this spot. You know, Peterson's 33. I think that Rizzo is 32 or somewhere in there. Ian Happ has a 161 ISO. He's been hitting around 6th or so. Jason Hayward, 164. Not the best overall numbers, but they can hit for some power. So I would say if you're looking for some value, check out Hayward, check out Happ. But if you're okay splurging, Rizzo and Peterson would be my top 2 ranked guys, followed by probably Chris Bryant and then Javier Baez. I know that Baez is the better ISO versus righties this year, but I just like that Bryant gets more balls in play. So Rizzo, Peterson, Bryant, Baez, and then Happ, followed by Hayward among the values. Based on the projected lineup for today, Wilson Contreras, I think works from if you're trying to be different, but I think that the contrarian mindset is the one thing that works in his favor for today. Dave, what do you think about Skubal for Detroit? I think he's actually pretty interesting. I'm interested for sure. The reason I'm interested is because he's been good recently. Let's go over to the pitching tab. He is $8,700 facing the Cardinals. He is one of the guys who has had a spin rate decline of late. But in that sample where the spin rate has gone down, he's faced the White Sox twice and the Royals. And in one of the White Sox games, he had 11 strikeouts. So I feel good pulling a larger sample here for Skubal. And we have his past 8 starts going back to his old changeup, 34% strikeout rate in that time, 3.25 skill interactive ERA. That means he has upside. So Dave, I am on board, but strictly only for tournaments. He does give up a lot of impactful contact still with a 51% hard hit rate, 41% fly ball rate. That means dingers can be an issue, and he's facing a team that can put the ball in the seats in the Cardinals. So he's very risky. So you got to make sure your risk tolerance is high enough to get there. But if you are okay with the with the risk that comes with him and selling out for some upside, I think that Scooble actually is a pretty enticing option and one I do like for today. So Dave, only if you're okay with the risk. Personally, I am. So I will use him, but I just want to make sure you are okay with risk as well. Jason, is there a must-start pitcher on FanDuel? There's no such thing as really like a must-start. I guess I don't want to phrase things that way because like there are no definitives in baseball. A lot of weird stuff can happen, but my favorite pitcher for today is Zach Wheeler. He is the highest salary guy at 11.4, but I think he's worth it. Overall, this is over his past 9 starts with more sinkers, 2.61 skill interactive ERA, 34% strikeout rate, 5% walk rate, great batted ball numbers. He's an absolute stud. Facing the Nationals, don't strike out a ton, but they also don't have a lot of power. The only downside I see with Wheeler is that they've seen him twice already since the start of May. They did see him earlier this month as well. So I do think that that's one thing to consider. Maybe you go Giolito instead. But for me, I think it's Wheeler, all things considered, is the top guy for today, followed by Giolito number 2. I would go probably Freddie Peralta 3. Facing Arizona, given their struggles, Clayton Kershaw 4, and then Tarek Skubal number 5 for me for today. DJ, you loved Robel Garcia as a Cub. Okay, so DJ is in favor of Robel Garcia. So who was asking about that before? I believe it was Mateo. Yeah, so Mateo, Robel Garcia has DJ's vote of confidence. So there you go. Let's talk to Jerry over on Facebook. How do you feel about the Yankees, White Sox, and Boston stacks? Yankees facing Brady Singer. He gets a lot of ground balls, so I'm not super keen on stacking the Yankees for today as a result of that. Love the White Sox. I did downgrade them and I see you have a White Sox hat in your avatar, so that's good. So we're making Jerry happy via the White Sox. I'm going to downgrade them a bit because of the lineup being weird with Leury Garcia batting 6th and having Goodwin in there as opposed to Yasmani Grandal. So slight downgrade, but do still like them. Boston is facing Ryan Yarbrough. Kind of the same thing as before with the reason I was not super high on the Yankees is that he does suppress hard contact. The sample I have on Ryan Yarbrough, he'll be the bulk reliever for today for the race. He's not starting, but he'll be the bulk reliever for today. He has 7 outings with fewer cutters. He's allowed just a 30% hard hit rate, so that puts me lower on Boston. So of those options, Jerry, I'd feel best about the White Sox by a decently wide margin. Alvin, for single entry, would you target the Astros or fade them due to possible popularity? For a single entry, I'd be fully in on fading them. I think that it kind of goes back to what we discussed before, Alvin, where like the way I was trying to phrase it was like, I want to take out my top ranked options and like reading content throughout today, looking at implied totals. It seems like the Astros will be one of, if not the most popular stack for tonight. So if you're trying to be different, you kind of want to just gloss over the Astros. And it's a 14-game slate. So we got a lot of good options elsewhere. We can just easily cross them off. Stacks are volatile. We might not pick the right guys. So I would say cross off the Astros. I think one team that is interesting for single entry is the White Sox because their implied total is a bit lower. It's been creeping up as the day has gone along for good reason, I would say. Again, downgrading them a bit as a result of the weird lineup, but I am still interested here for sure. And I think that they're a pretty good single entry stack for me for today. A's and Cubs work pretty well too. So Alvin, I would say check out the A's, Cubs, and the White Sox. And for single entry, I would be okay glossing over the Astros for today. Let's talk to DJ. Cole Irvin, Zach Greinke, Kyle Hendricks, Peralta, or Stroman. For me, that is Freddie Peralta by a significant margin. Peralta is another guy with a spin rate reduction recently, but he's been very good despite that in that sample. The sample I have here on Peralta is his past 5 starts where he has been upping his curveball usage, kind of becoming like a 3-pitch pitcher. But in that time, 31% strikeout rate, still letting up a lot of hard contact and walking some guys, but the Diamondbacks not a big threat. The roof is closed for tonight in Arizona as well. So I would say of that group, DJ, Peralta is number 1 for me by a significant margin. DJ, is Leury Garcia worth a look for tonight? I don't want to get there personally. I don't want to say no to anyone batting 6th in the stack that I like, especially when they are a super low salary. But I would say avoid if you can is the way that I'd phrase that. And he's someone I would prefer not to have in my player pool. I think that's like the way that I'd phrase that. He's not gonna get you power. 066 ISO versus lefties. Let's pull up the profile here for Garcia to expand it a bit and see what he has done if we look back to last year. Because, with platoon splits, we do we want to see a larger sample, stuff like that. So let's go here with the splits with Garcia versus lefties, and that was only 8 plate appearances. So the last time he had an impactful sample was back in 2019 versus lefties, 131 ISO. That's not really enough for me. So I would say try to avoid him if you can, because there's just not quite enough power for me to be super enticed there. Diffuse. I'm trying to 4-4 with the White Sox, but can't with Giolito as my pitcher. So I think it depends on what your second stack would be. Oh, I guess you can't. Yeah, because you literally can't because Giolito is your pitcher. So yeah, diffuse. I would say actually the best way to navigate that, if you want to go Giolito and stack the White Sox, is just go 3 White Sox, go Abreu, go Anderson, and go Vaughn, and just skip over the Moncada and Goodwin guys. And I would say those are the 3 I feel best about anyway. So if you want to use Giolito, I would say go Abreu, Anderson, and Vaughn, and just use your one-off as being away from the White Sox stack. Use your second stack as being a 4-player stack. Jerry, I like the Yankees middle of the lineup, 3-5-6, and the Boston 2-4-6 with White Sox, just Anderson and Abreu. What do you think? I love Anderson and Abreu, so I'm on board with that part for sure. Yankees, again, facing Singer, so not overall super intrigued there. 2-4-6 is Judge, Stanton, and Torres. Torres, it's a rough position, so I think you can make it the justification there. I can never say no to Judge and Stanton, so those ones work for sure. Red Sox, 2-4-6 against Yarbrough, Verdugo, Bogarts, and Renfroe. I'd be a bit wary of Verdugo because his power goes down a lot against lefties. I know Kittredge is a righty, which means the first plate appearance for Verdugo will be versus a righty, but his second and third, potentially fourth plate appearance will be against the lefty. So I'd probably try to dump out of Verdugo there and find someone else as being an outfielder. That's the one guy there I'm not super high on, just because Yarbrough likely to be the bulk guy for the Rays for today. Diffuse. So I guess with that being said, are there any third basemen, $3,000 or less you like as one-offs? This is related to the White Sox question, talking about the situation we had Giolito. So let's take out Wheeler and put Giolito in there to replicate this issue for diffuse, and go to third base and talk about 3,000 or lower. I'm guessing diffuse, you probably had Moncada in there and had to pivot away from that. Matt Chapman has been hitting for more power recently. He had a little binge a couple weekends ago, and it looks like that's kind of carried over. So I would say Chapman at $3,000. He'll face Hearn, at least in his first plate appearance, potentially a second, depending on how far Hearn can stretch. I doubt I'm going to find anyone I like more than Chapman. You could potentially go with Wisdom if he plays for the Cubs. I've not seen their lineup as of yet, but mentioned before, I do like him. So I would say Chapman's a great one-off, unless your other stack is the A's, which it might be, and then Wisdom if it is the A's. So if he plays, again, he might not play. So make sure you check the lineup. But either way, I think Chapman's a good option for a one-off at third base at $3,000 or lower. All right, Jerry's looking for some home run calls. Let's do this. Let's go over to hitters here. And again, no ideal weather conditions for hitting home runs for tonight. We got to keep that in mind. We're not going to find a great park for dingers for today. So let's try to find a pitcher who is potentially prone to the long ball. Not Scooble, doesn't let up enough balls in play. Morgan is definitely someone I would think would do so. So we're probably thinking about Cubs. I think we got some Jock Jams tonight. Jock Peterson going deep at least once. We'll say at least once. Jock Jams back on the menu for tonight. I would say Rizzo's probably in that discussion as well, but that's kind of boring to go with 2 Cubs. So we'll go with Jock Jams, number 1. And our second home run call for today, looking for a homer who might be a little bit dinger prone, who I don't think will get a lot of strikeouts. Potentially could be Adolis Garcia. He has not been as good recently as he had been previously. Let's pull up the game logs here for Adolis Garcia and see what that looks like. Oh, a couple home runs recently. I misspoke. All right. So I would say the home run calls for today for Jerry, we're going to go with Adolis Garcia, And we're going to go with Jock Peterson, Jock Jams, the 2 home run calls for today. Jason, I always seem to stack the Braves no matter who they're playing. I've done that a lot too, Jason. It's kind of fun to stack them because they have a lot of power. So, Jason, I can't blame you. I've been there too. And it's actually worked out pretty well. So keep on doing it, whatever is working there. DJ, would you start Andrew Heaney against the Giants? Probably not. They've got a lot of righties in there, and Heaney has some pretty serious issues. The numbers I have for Heaney over his past 3 starts with a decreased spin rates. Still getting strikeouts, but it's still letting up a lot of hard contact. The Giants pretty good. So Heaney, not someone on my radar for me personally. Jerry likes Jock Peterson too. So if Jerry's on it, and I like it too, I feel like we got to up it to 2 home runs for Jock. Is that like too much? I don't know. We'll see. Jason, you can tell which pitchers we're using sticky, spin rate drop. Yeah, that's why actually I thought I might get a question on it, so I actually had Garrett Cole's Baseball Savant page hanging out up here. Cole, not super high on my list for tonight. The numbers I have on him are over his past 5 starts with decreased fastball movement. 3.47 skill interactive ERA, so it's still been good, but the strikeout rate down to 26%. So I'm okay being lower on Cole for tonight. DJ likes Machado and Tatis for his home run calls. Okay, so DJ's got Machado and Tatis. Jerry and I locked up on Jock Peterson, and I'll go with Adolis Garcia as my other one for today. Vladdy going deep, according to Jason. Okay, so we got some good home run calls. Jerry likes Tatis as well. I'm going to stick with Garcia. I think I might be on an island here, but Adolis Garcia going deep with Jock Peterson for today. Jason likes Vladdy and Jock. So we're all aboard the Jock Peterson train. He's probably not going to play now. That's just the way things go. So, we've jinxed Jock. It's done. Oh, well. That is all the time that we have here for today on the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. Big thank you to Brandon Gdula for the lead-in for today, talking some PGA DFS and betting. Make sure you follow Brandon on Twitter at Gdula13, GDULA13. Also check out our PGA Heat Check DFS podcast if you want more DFS discussion. We broke down the Travelers Championship, our favorite golfers in each salary tier, and how we're viewing things for this week over on FanDuel. Also, a big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. If you have additional questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Let's all cheer on Jock Peterson together, and let's go, Jock. Good timing, Cal. That was perfect. We'll talk to you all once again tomorrow at 4 p.m. This has been the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A.